Let's find the missing term in a polynomial. I like to think of these problems kind of as little riddles. Standardized tests love to ask these types of questions, and they're really not that hard. Begin by reading, of course. Choose the value of y that will make the following true. So I scan my expression, and right here is where I find y. And my trick is, I look at this and I'm like, you know what, if I were to solve this, I would have to begin by distributing to this inside trinomial. And one of the things I do is I actually kind of go out of order. I look at this and I go, where's my highest degree? It would be right here with the x cubed. I know when I multiply this outer polynomial times this here, I'm going to need an x to the fourth. So I think about what would y have to be in order to get an x to the fourth? Well, I'm thinking that it has to be 1. And I'm going to confirm my logic with the next multiplication. So right here I have a negative 5x cubed in this term. So I'm going to multiply by the second highest, which would be right here. And if I multiplied x to the y power times negative 5x squared, well, if I want to keep the x and add my exponents, I'm thinking, what value would y have to be in order for it to equal this 3? And again, it would have to be 1, so that confirms my logic. I know that y must be 1. Here's a second example where it states that Ray started with this binomial. She added another polynomial and got a sum of this bottom trinomial. The question is, what was the second polynomial? So I'm going to begin with what she started with. This is a binomial, and she is, of course, adding a second one, or a second polynomial, I don't know the size, and got an answer that was a trinomial. So that's what the words state, and my question is, what goes in those parentheses? What's the second polynomial? So I scan my answer and notice there's a negative 5x to the third. There was no cubic terms here, so that tells me she must have added that entire term in, negative 5x cubed. Now I go to my squared term. I end with a negative x squared, but began with a positive 1. So what would I have to add to 1x squared to get negative 1x squared? Well, that tells me that she added a negative 2, or you could think subtracted 2x squared. Again, because 1 minus 2 is negative 1. As a constant, Ray began with positive 1, but ended with positive 2, so what do you do to 1 to get to 2? That means you added 1 more on. So what was the second polynomial that Ray added? It would be this one here in the middle, this negative 5x cubed minus 2x squared plus 1. Now I'd encourage you to double check to make sure if you were to simplify this, you get this trinomial over here. The questions that are slightly more difficult are the ones that involve subtraction. It says Rob started with this polynomial, he subtracted another and got a difference of the bottom polynomial. So again, I'm going to begin with what he started with, subtracted 1, figure out what he subtracts to get a polynomial like this. So again, I begin with my highest term, 4x cubed, and ended with 10. Well, but remember we're subtracting. So I'm thinking 4 minus what value gives me 10? Hopefully you realize that that would be negative 6. Because 4 minus negative 6 is positive 10. So I know that I need a negative 6x to the third. I'm going to go on to my squared terms. I have a negative 4x squared, and I ended with a negative 4x squared. So that didn't change, so I'm not going to put anything in this polynomial here to change that term. Then I go on to my linear term. I begin with a negative x, and Rob ends with a negative 2x. So if I think about what are those coefficients, that's negative 1 and ending with negative 2. So I'm thinking negative 1 minus what value equals negative 2. Hopefully you're thinking, well, that would be a 1 in here. Negative 1 minus positive 1 is negative 2. So that means since it's a positive 1, I'm going to put plus 1x because I'm looking at I'm looking at negative 1x plus, negative 1x minus positive 1x would be negative 2x. And then lastly, I see I have this lone negative 4 over here, and there were no constants to start, so how would I get negative 4? Well, that means there must have been a plus 4, and that throws somebody off because they're like, well, why? Because remember, you're subtracting. On subtraction, I highly encourage you to make sure that you did this right. So one of the things you could do is put this negative here and distribute your negative sign to make sure that your polynomial is indeed going to give you what you think it should. So it would switch your sign to be a positive 6x cubed, a minus 1x, and a minus 4, and then check all your combining of like terms. So this does indeed give you the 10x cubed. Combine the squared terms. There's only one, so that would be the negative 4x squared. Then negative 1x minus 1x is indeed negative 2x, so that works, and then minus 4. So it does work. So what is the final answer here? It says, what was the second polynomial? It's what's in the blue parentheses. So negative 6x cubed plus 1x plus 4.